Welcome to my talk titled A Framework for Ambitious Projects. At least that's what it used to be called until about 3 months ago. What happened 3 months ago? Great question, Michael. Thank you for asking. 3 months ago, I had a crazy idea. I had an idea to build an icebreaker game for attendees at a conference that I was going to called React Miami. All right. The kicker on that was that I came up with the idea only 1 week before the conference started. All right, so 1 week to build a full playable game, hopefully with some fun prizes for everyone to enjoy, which probably means that I picked a tech stack that I'd shipped to production thousands of times, right? Nope. All right, I chose Laravel. All right, yeah. Why? Well, probably because I was going to be on this stage, and I had never shipped a Laravel app to production before. Figured I probably should. And I've never been one to shy away from an ambitious project. But the real reason why I decided to go with a new framework on a timeline was because of you. Now, I have heard from all of you over and over and over how fast you can ship with Laravel. And I decided to put that to the test. And what happened over the next week changed my entire talk. In 2 days, I had a full working game shipped to Laravel Cloud. 2. Now, it wasn't perfect. I sent it to a couple friends. They found some bugs, obviously. We all know the true test of any new tech stack is how simple the debugging process went. Well, the bugs were fixed the next day. I had a little friendly help from the community, but with a day to spare, I was back in business. So, what did this project change about my talk? I said everything, right? All right, well, this talk is no longer a talk about some generic framework for ambitious projects. This is about the framework for ambitious projects. And for this conference, I decided, why don't we take it up a notch? I would like you to meet Laravel Roguike. This device and everything that you are about to see has been built exclusively with Laravel, React, and Tailwind. Now, I know that it's been a long 2 days, a good 2 days, but I need you to help me with this part, all right? I'm gonna press this button right here, and when I press it, it's gonna start recording the audio of what is happening right now. All right, and I'm going to count to 3, and I want all of you in the audience, as loud as you can, to yell out what your favorite code editor is. All right, can we do that? All right, so I'm not sure how well my computer is going to pick up the audio. Let's be loud, and let's pay attention to what you're seeing on the screen, this little orb-looking thing. It's going to give us some feedback on how well everything's going. All right, we ready? All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, that was pretty good. I was gonna make y'all do it a second time, but I don't think we need to. All right, so we have a recorded audio clip. Why don't we find out what happens when we press this button? Ooh, all right, what you are seeing, I did not expect that to happen right away. What you're seeing is a randomly generated dungeon level based off of the audio that we just recorded. That means it is one of a kind. And the enemies that you are seeing around are also randomly generated in number and where they're located. So if we went and recorded a different audio, you would get a completely different game level to play, a completely different number of enemies. And our job is to meander around here, find all of these enemies, and take them out, all right, before they take me out. However, I don't have time for that today. But why don't we go ahead and talk about how all of this is even possible? Well, I can tell you that when I started on that idea, I had no idea, okay? How do you even turn audio into a game level? Well, I went and took some time to chat with my friendly AI, and I figured it out, right? It's called procedural generation. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Okay, these are just some of the algorithms that can be used for procedural generation. That's quite a few of them. Like, how do you pick? What's the right choice? Well, back again to my friend the LLM, and it helped me hone in on what I needed. You see, every single algorithm on this list has different characteristics and a feel for what you can see when you generate shapes and geography using them, the outputs. And I knew exactly what I wanted to be. It's a dungeon. Pretty straightforward. Square walls, little rooms, corridors going between them. That meant that what I wanted was called a binary space partitioning tree, BSP for short. It fit the bill. Great. I have an algorithm. Does anybody know what an algorithm is? Once again, I didn't. So I had to learn what that was. All right. And what a BSP tree does is this. This is how it works. You start with a predefined space. And then inside of that space, you define a safe area where you want to split it. That means, AKA, these little gray boxes on the outside, we don't want to split it there. The next step, I had to figure out where you would divide it inside of this safe area. I used a random number generator to pick from these coordinates, and boom, we have a randomly placed split in the safe area. Okay, but if it's random, won't the split be somewhere different the next time we tried to generate this? Man, y'all have some good questions today. Yes. That means I need to introduce what is this beautiful PHP function, mt_srand. What a name, am I right? It takes a seed. Now, a seed is just another name for a number. And when you pass that same number, that seed, into this generator function, what you get is a list of random numbers when you call it, but they're always going to be in the same order. So it's random, but it's predictably random, if you will. Okay? So then we do that process again, and again, and again, until each split reaches the minimum threshold for what you've kind of defined. You get to play around with these values to kind of figure out what looks good. Put some rooms in there, also using our random number generator. Connect them with some corridors. I'm obviously glossing over a lot of the details here, but at a high level, now you understand how a BSP tree with procedural generation works. Awesome. All right. But what does audio do? How does audio play a part in this? Thankfully, I kind of already knew how to record audio in the browser. But how do I select different audio inputs? How can I make sure it's going to work when I'm up here on this stage? How do I save that audio to a file? And most importantly, you remember those seed numbers that we need for the generator to work? How do we turn an audio file into just a single number? All of these are great questions. All of these I had to try and figure out, and here's what I landed on. We have our user, we have our device, and just like we did at some point, someone's going to randomly press that button, and it is going to start they're going to try speaking into it. All right, how do you capture that? The browser has this really neat function called get user media, and it is required to capture any media from an end user because it requires us to get permission from them. Now, you can get audio or video data, but by passing in this audio true flag, we're telling it we only want the audio. All right, it goes and asks the user, do you want to let them record you? They say yes. We get a data stream full of audio data. Now, the nice thing about this function is as long as that same user has called that function and given you permission before, the next time you call it, you just get the stream of data. We don't have to worry about the old song and dance of permissions. Okay, we have a stream of audio data. Great. Guess what that does? Any guesses? Absolutely nothing. Isn't that great? A media stream on its own streams right into the abyss. You can't do anything with it, all right? But we need it to be saved. We need it in an audio file. We've got to turn that audio file into data. And for that, we need a very well-named web API called the media recorder. Pretty obvious, right? All right, the media recorder allows us to store the audio stream data somewhere so that we can access it when the recording's complete. So when the user finishes their recording, we pull the data out of the media recorder into a blob, and from there, a blob to a file is a pretty easy transition, and boom, we have an audio file. But that's not all we need. Remember, we need data. How else would I show you that particle orb thing that we did? Or get the seed values that we need for the generator we already talked about? Luckily, there is a web audio API that is built exactly for this. Now, there's this thing called audio context. It is extremely interesting. There's so much packed in there for just manipulating audio and doing post-audio production. Y'all should go check it out, but we only needed one thing from it. It's called an analyzer, all right? The analyzer gives us access to the amplitude and the frequency as a uint8 array. Now, try saying that 4 times fast. A uint8 array is just an array of integers that are always between 0 and 255. And the amplitude array represents how loud we were being. That means when we were yelling and the orb was moving, the further the particles were away from the center, it meant the louder we were being. And we also can capture the frequency data. But how do we turn this array of frequency data into some number we can use to generate our dungeon level, and one that we can use to generate random numbers of enemies and random placements? For that, for the dungeon one specifically, I used what is called an entropy calculation. Now, all this did was condense that array of data down to a single number using a measurement on how complex the data was. The higher the number, it meant that the more randomized and the more crazy our audio frequencies were. Now, the lower the number was, it would indicate that there was more pattern or structure to the audio. I would imagine whatever we just put into there probably fell onto the random and complex side of things. All right, now to get the value that we needed for enemy count, I used a different calculation. Like, why do the same one? That's not any fun. This one's called a mode calculation, and its job was to condense the frequency data into a single number, just like the other one. But the way this one worked was it found whatever the most common frequency was, and then it measured how close are all the other frequencies concentrated around that most common frequency. All right, we've got our dungeon generator. We've got our numbers to make it work. The final piece of the puzzle is called a game loop. The game loop is the engine that makes all the data that we just talked about, and we generated something fun and playable. And I could talk to you about this for the rest of this talk. In fact, 2 months ago, I actually did at another conference. So if this is something you're interested in, come find me after or ask me on Twitter or whatever. There's a YouTube video. You can watch it there. Today, unfortunately, I have other things that I would like us to focus on before the end of this talk. So let's wrap this section up in a tidy bow before we move on. The reason that I think Laravel is the total package for any project, no matter how ambitious, is this. Laravel is a mature ecosystem. There's over a decade of strong opinions about how a Laravel app should look. Now, Josh Seary and I had a chat with our buddy John O'Nolan, and he phrased this as its stability. And he's right. This is the foundation, a stable foundation, and the reason that I was able to ship my first Laravel app ever in 2 days was because of this. How I was able to fix the issue that I ran into immediately after was because of this. Every time that I had a question, there was an answer. Not 100 answers, let me be very clear. One answer. Now, coming from the JavaScript ecosystem, I cannot tell you what a breath of fresh air that was. There is not another community with the level of top-tier talent, super fun events across the world, and most importantly, a community as friendly as this one. I was here for a day, one day last year before the conference even started, and I've been in private messages and group chats with all the people that I made friends in that tiny, short period of time the entire year since. And it's the whole reason I wanted to come back this year. Now, and I've talked to, I think, maybe 4 or 5 people already who are not even Laravel developers who are here at this conference who had the same thing to say. They saw how great this community was online and said, hey, I want to spend time with them. Do you know what kind of superpower that is on the internet? It's a nasty place out there, but not the Laravel community. All right, this one was really a big thing for me. First Laravel app, getting started is a single command. I get to choose my favorite front end, but Laravel can get you started at the same place no matter what framework you're choosing. Not to mention the comprehensive batteries included catalog full of packages for when your app starts hitting the realities of building real businesses in software. Now, I know you all saw the keynote yesterday to know that with Forge and Cloud, this team has painstakingly crafted infrastructure built just for Laravel. Not to mention first-party observability with Nightwatch and the rocket fuel on top of all this, AI. I didn't even know that Laravel Boost was a thing when I was writing this. Okay, do you know what makes for having an incredible experience with AI? Having a well-documented framework that's over a decade old. Do you want to know what else makes for an incredible experience with AI? The ability to use whatever popular framework that works seamlessly with inertia. All right, do you know what else makes an incredible experience with AI? I think y'all are gonna like this one. Having a community of smart, helpful folks when you're not having an incredible experience with AI. What my extremely short time building with Laravel has shown me is that from top to bottom, Laravel is undeniably the framework for ambitious projects. All right, at this point of the talk, you're probably like, who cares? Ambitious project this, ambitious project that, blah, blah, blah. Why does it matter? All right. Well, it's because I believe that the path from your present to the future that you actually want can be found through ambitious projects. Not to mention, it's way more fun that way. All right. Last month, let me just tell you a story. Last month, I flew out to San Francisco after my company got acquired. And I was riding in a car with a new coworker, and he kept talking about how convinced he was that leak code, although super lame, was the only thing that you had to be able to do to get a job in tech, that it was a requirement. Well, I mentioned that I'd never done a single leak code interview my entire career. And he just kind of looked at me and was like, how? So I took him down the path that landed me in the seat in the car right next to him. In 2014, while roaming the halls of the industrial design building that I took classes in, I noticed a paper flyer. It said, App Designer Wanted. Now, I'd always wanted to design an app, but one, I was still a student, and two, I was an industrial design student, not a graphic designer. But I went for it anyway, because I knew that this was something that I wanted. All right, a year later, 2015, I got my portfolio with the app project that I decided to do in there, and I'm walking around the job fair at Auburn University, and I run into Martha Underwood. She takes a look through my portfolio and spots the app project and says, hey, can you stick around after I'm done with this booth? I'd like to chat with you. And Martha went on to be my first web design client ever. All right, 6 years later, Martha's back, and she asks me if I would like to help design and build a startup that she had an idea for that she was working on. Now, at the time, I remember thinking, a whole MVP? I've got a full-time job, I've got a 2-year-old, and my wife, Allie, is pregnant with our second. Never being one to shy away from an ambitious project, I said yes, and I started working with a co-founder, a back-end engineer named Chris Winslet. All right, a year later, finishing up the work on that MVP, I get an email in my inbox. It's from Chris, and he said that he started a new role at a company called Crunchy Data, and he said that that he had another role that was open, and having worked with me the previous year, he knew that I was the perfect fit for this role. Then I turned to my coworker, and I said, 2025, Crunchy gets acquired by Snowflake. I end up in San Francisco in a car on my way to my boss's house with a new coworker. It took over a decade to end up in that car, to end up sharing this story on this stage with you about how being willing to bet on yourself can chart a path to a completely new future that you actually want. Still not convinced about the impact of ambitious projects? Forget about me. Look around you. This whole community is owed to one man and his ambitious project. All right? Now, at this point, I hope that you are sufficiently hyped up that you want to leave this conference and go start your own ambitious projects. All right? But I want to leave you with some reality, some personal lessons as you venture off into the unknown. One, every expert starts as an explorer. Pursuing ambitious projects requires people willing to tackle things they don't even know yet. All right? Every explorer has to not only push themselves forward, but they also push their community forward. Explorers bring new ideas, new solutions, new energy, all because they are willing to take a step off the beaten path and try something new and see what else is out there. All right. We all love the feeling of cracking open a brand new code base, Work in progress commits are flying right and left until we hit a roadblock. And believe me, you're gonna hit them because ambitious projects aren't called ambitious for nothing. You lose momentum and the excitement that you had at the start of every project begins to fade. Now, I've hit this friction point time and time again, and sometimes it definitely gets the best of me. But the times that I've pushed through are the times that I've felt the most fulfilled in the work that I do. All right, do not leave success up to chance. Now, yesterday, John said, I should have put this in my notes. John said, we don't have to like it, but it doesn't mean it's not true. It is your job to hold up a giant neon sign that says, this is what I like, and this is what I can do. It isn't fair, but this is how you have to find opportunity. You have to tell other people exactly what opportunities you're interested in and exactly what you're good at. But there's also a bonus benefit to this. People who have the same interests as you will find you. This helps combat the friction that we just talked about, because although friction does create fulfillment, friends do too. Don't be a grumpy old Scrooge, all right? We're living in a time where our ambitions can be bigger with the help of AI. Now, mine definitely are, and I think we should all be taking advantage of it. And I want to end with this point. You don't need to succeed to be successful. Now, this point sounds very counterintuitive, right? So I just want to share a little story from my past. In 2019, I started a podcast. It was about a programming language that I was really into at the time called Elm. And I did one season of this podcast. Now, one season, success was probably a lot more, right? Sponsorships, I'm a successful podcaster. That was not the case. It was one season. But the job that I had before Crunchy Data was all because of that podcast. The CTO of that company happened to stumble across it, and by listening to just the one season that I put myself on a limb out there to do, made him say, you know what? This Will guy thinks exactly the way I would like for this role. So, although your projects may not go the way that you think they are, ambitious projects can find success in ways you never expect. Now, as I wrap up, if there is one single thing that you get out of everything that I've been yapping about up here on this stage, it's this. No one can be ambitious for you. If you're excited about something, don't just sit around on your hands waiting for somebody else to tell you to do it. Get out there, start building, and explore. Hold up that neon sign, and the future that you're excited about will come find you. My name's Will King. I'm a design engineer at Snowflake. You can find me at wking.dev or on Twitter at wking__. Or as Aaron mentioned, every Friday at 2:30 Eastern, me and my buddy Josh Sheary have a live show on YouTube. We call it Riff and Refine. It's a lot of fun. You should come hang out. And I can't get off this stage without talking about this, the most ambitious and fulfilling project of all. My lovely wife, Allie, and my 3 beautiful children. Now, the only thing I ask is that nobody tell my wife I said this, okay? Thank you.
Oh man, you're in big trouble. You're in big trouble. Okay, so first of all, in the speakers Telegram group, all the speakers are talking about how beautiful your slides are. They're furious because you have the most beautiful slides I've ever seen.
Well, if you're not a good speaker, at least make it look good.
Right, you've got both. So I guess here's my question. With that last slide in mind,
Yes.
3 kids, family, full-time job. How do you, as you're thinking about evaluating a future ambitious project, how are we weighing these things? You said it doesn't have to succeed to be successful, so I imagine that plays a part.
Right.
But you're looking at these new projects and thinking, is this worth my time? What are your thought processes there?
Well, my thought processes in the past were yes.
Okay.
And that sometimes is not always the right choice, as I've learned recently. It gets harder the more times you say yes. You got to figure out how to say no. And it's very hard to evaluate because, as you could see through the story, it's not always obvious which ones are going to lead to success. So I think there's a certain amount of luck involved, but that's why I talk about not leaving it up to chance.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you say yes to, you can still talk about it, you can still share it, and who knows what serendipity will arrive because you decided to talk about it. I think the decision factor is how much do I enjoy what I'm choosing to work on, because usually it's extra, And usually it's going to be hard. So if it's going to be extra and hard, I want it to at least be extra fun.
And so is that the thing that drives you through the parts that are hard because you don't know the success is inevitable?
Family.
Yeah.
You know, like I have an idea in mind for what I want for my family. And I know that life isn't just going to hand it to me. So if I want that future for my family, I'm going to find a way to push through to find it.
Well, I haven't cried yet on stage, so we got to get you out of
Okay.
here. Well, all right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Y'all give it up for Earl King.